This is a painting I did in 2021. Back in the beginning of 2021, I created the Spaceman. He was a character based on myself and my experience with ADHD. Back then I felt like I was falling, and this is called Falling. And this right here, this is a painting that I'm working on right now. It's called Flying. You see, if I turn this upside down, it's pretty interesting, right? Falling and flying. I'm quite proud of these. This has sort of been my experience over the last year. Today we're talking about how to make art prints. Welcome to 5 Minute Fridays. Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 5 Minute Fridays. I am your host, Jordan T. Mystic. These are a lot of fun to do. I am an artist with a capital A, a father, and my mission is to create more creators. So that's what 5 Minute Friday is about. These are just small bite-sized videos in which in 5 minutes, I do my best to give you 5 tips on all sorts of questions about art. And today we're talking about how to make art prints, both online and in person. Prints are a perfect way to earn a living for artists. Original art isn't as accessible to most of your audience. So buying a print is a dope way to support your favorite artist. And if you're an artist who doesn't have an audience, maybe you're a recovering artist, maybe you're just starting out, selling prints are also a perfect way to build your audience. Through selling prints, that's how I built my audience. I built it by going to conventions, going to markets, selling my work in the form of prints. Through that, I built a mailing list and I built an Instagram audience, which has now moved out to all sorts of platforms, and now we're here. The first thing we have to do though, we need to get our timer up. Can you see that? There's our 5 minute timer. You ready? Start that timer, editor man. Ding! Haha. Tip number 1. If you're doing digital art, get your dimensions and your color profile ready. When you're starting out, there's a lot to learn, and this is the main thing you need to learn. Figure out what size paper you want to use. Make sure that when you do it digitally, you get those dimensions correct and you put your art into those dimensions, and CMYK. So RGB is really great for online stuff. Even if you're making digital prints for people to buy and then print themselves, do it in CMYK because that is a printing color profile. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I don't know why it's K, maybe it's because it ends in K, but it's black. So use CMYK and Photoshop, Procreate, it'll do all the work for you. It might look a little bit dull, but it means that your colors won't come out desaturated. If you use RGB and you print them, trust me, I've done it before, your colors just come out so desaturated. You don't want that. This is kind of a steps one, this episode. So tip number 2, do your artwork and make it sexy. Now, you might be drawing straight onto Procreate, you might be scanning in like I'm doing. As you can see, we're gonna run through my process very quickly. What I do is I tend to draw in my sketchbook, or I will take an idea from my sketchbook, I'll put it into Procreate, I'll flash it out, give it some colors if that's what I really want. What you can do with your line art is you can run it through Photoshop, Illustrator, Procreate, and then call it a day. Now you're ready to go on to step number 3 or tip number 3. Figure out where and how you are going to print your prints. You have 2 choices. You can find a local printer, you could find a commercial printer. Here in Australia, we've got Officeworks, there's photo printers. You could find a small business that prints them out, or you could do what I do and you could do print on demand. This all depends on where you're gonna sell and how much storage space you have. I've spent years storing hard copy prints, and I've gotten personally to a point where unless I'm making exclusive runs on my prints. I don't really like storing prints. I don't have very much space for them. The clutter, I'm already declutter as it is. The clutter stresses me out. However, some people don't mind having those hard copies. Now, what I suggest you do is you sort of be conservative if you're gonna go and do a market or something like that, and just buy a short number of prints. Don't buy 20 of everything. That's what I did for my first convention, and I overreached. Something hardcore. Print on demand is really a great way to do prints without ever having to touch them. If you don't know what print on demand is, I'm not going to go into it deep here, but basically you upload your file and somebody else prints it for you. You could do this through Shopify, Printify, Printful, any of those companies, but it's a really great way to print actual hard copy prints without ever having to touch them. The way that I like to do it is I like to turn it into a PDF. I turn it into a PDF, I put it up on Etsy or on my website, and you can order that print digitally, and the person who's buying it can go and print it in whatever size they want. As long as you format it to a maximum size, you can print it in whatever size they want. So I try to format it to about an A4, A3 size, and people can print it like that. The resolution, with that, make your resolution about 72 dpi. That's going to help you out heaps. But if you are printing hard copies, I suggest a cardstock. There's a lot of different paper choices. The cardstock of about 200 to 250 GSM. That's the thickness of your cardstock. You can get a glossy finish or a matte finish. If your stuff is oversaturated and really bright like mine, really comic booky, 200 to 250 with a glossy finish. Depends on what your budget is. Just try to buy 10 of them, see how you can sell them if you're doing a market or you're doing them online. And the other thing you can get is you can get a giclée print. These are beautiful. They're beautiful, glossy. They've got so much texture to them, but I suggest only doing that if you have a higher budget. This is a slightly more premium print. Tip number 4, where will you sell them? This is really important because it'll be able to tell you whether you're going to print on demand, whether you're going to do digital prints, or whether you're going to do hard copy. Where will you sell them? Have you got a website? Are you going to markets and conventions, like comic book conventions and such? Are you going to third-party sellers? Now, I found that when I was at comic book conventions, I couldn't get rid of prints quick enough. People love buying prints at conventions, especially if they love your art. However, online, I couldn't get rid of those hard copies. Everything that was left over, I still got a couple of years in this box behind me right here, chocked full of prints that I just overbought or just didn't sell because it was 2 years there where I wasn't doing conventions. Markets are a really great place to do this as well. Often markets, you know, like handmade markets or art markets, these are the audiences you want to sell them to. And then there's obviously places like your website. You're going to need to draw traffic to your website via YouTube, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. The other thing is Etsy, Shopify. You're going to have to market your website yourself. Whereas places like Etsy, they have an established audience. So it allows you to sell things to a larger audience. Often you don't have to do the work. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have to do the work. You're going to need to do a bit of SEO research and stuff like that. That's a whole other video. But if you have an established audience, prints are a great way to give them access to you and to support you. If you're making original art, not everybody can purchase your original art. When you're at markets as well, it's a good place to take some original art with you and then have the option for prints. A lot of people who do gallery shows, they have an option for a print as well. It's up to you. You just figure out where you want to sell them. Just finally, tip number 5. Who will you sell them to? Who you're selling them to is going to establish where you're going to sell them, what you're going to sell. It's a product after all. So you need an audience, first of all. Just like you guys are my audience, recovering artists, new artists, young artists, old artists, especially artists with ADHD, are my audience. So you need an audience. You need to know who you're selling to, which will allow you to build the best possible product. If you're selling to a gallery audience or an audience that normally buys original art, then a giclée print is going to be what you want. But if you're going to comic book convention, a 200 GSM A3, A4 print is going to do the trick for you. So you figure out who your audience is and you can sort of reverse engineer from step 5 back to step 1. I don't suggest going back to step 1. I mean, you can reverse engineer what exactly you're going to print and how you're going to print it, but it's good to think of all of these things before you do any prints, before you do any starting of your business from a print point of view. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. On the conversation of prints, I have just uploaded these horoscope prints. I have a few. This is the one in my sketchbook here. There is a whole series of all 12 horoscopes in this tattoo design style. you can get yourself a digital print. You can also get an exclusive limited run of 100 of these series of prints. Yes, only 100 of these horoscope prints on my website. If you want a digital print, you can go and get it printed yourself. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been 5 Minute Fridays. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see a more extended video on my process, and we'll really flesh it out. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, I've been your host, Jordan T. Misty. Never forget, stay weird. Are you still there? Don't forget, you're beautiful. Don't ever forget. I love you. Whoa. Did you see that catch? That was close. That belongs in the blue strip. Alright. Today we're talking about how to make art prints to sell. Welcome to 5 Minute Fridays. Alright, let's get into it. I am your host, Jordan T. Mystic. These are a lot of fun to do. There we go. Oh man, later in the day, I don't do this in the mornings. So to all my Leos, what's up? Cut that, that's ridiculous. Oh, can't remember what it is. There's going to be a bit of cutting here. Often markets, like handmade markets, or I am sweating up a storm here. It is so humid in this office because I got the windows closed.